Ladies and gentlemen, there is a powerful truth in life. Not everyone you meet will celebrate your vision, support your growth, or believe in your dream. Some will criticize, some will complain, and some will simply drain the very energy you need to become who you are destined to be. Now let me tell you this, negative people are not your problem. Your reaction to them is we live in a world filled with opinions, but not all opinions are created in wisdom. Some come from wounds. When someone is constantly negative, it says more about the condition of their heart than the content of their mind. People who are hurting often hurt others. People who are afraid often project fear. And if you're not careful, you'll start carrying battles that were never yours to fight. So how do you handle them? Most negative people do not wake up in the morning with the sole intention of dragging others down. In truth, negativity is often a symptom of something much deeper. It's not just about their words or actions. It's about what's going on beneath the surface. When you begin to see negative behavior through the lens of understanding, you stop reacting emotionally and start responding with wisdom. You see, negativity usually comes from unresolved pain, fear, disappointment, or insecurity. A person who constantly criticizes others may be projecting their own feelings of inadequacy. Someone who always expects the worst may have been let down so many times in life that they no longer know how to hope. And someone who gossips, complains, and finds fault in everything may actually be crying for help in the only way they know how. The mistake many people make is taking this negativity at face value. They see the attitude, the complaints, the bitterness, and they either retaliate or absorb it. But when you understand that most negative people are battling internal storms, you develop a new kind of empathy. That doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect, nor does it mean you excuse bad behavior. But it does mean that you learn to see them not as enemies, but as individuals who are hurting. There's a famous saying that goes, hurt people hurt people. And it's true. People who haven't healed from their past often bleed on those who didn't cut them. That's why it's so important to train yourself not to react impulsively. If someone speaks harshly to you, pause for a moment. Consider what might be going on in their life. Are they under stress? Have they lost something or someone? Are they dealing with rejection, depression, or fear? This shift in perspective doesn't just help you deal with others more effectively, it helps protect your own peace. Because the moment you internalize someone else's negativity, you give them power over your emotions. That's a power no one should have but you. Another key aspect of understanding negativity is realizing that some people simply haven't been taught how to process life constructively. They may come from environments where complaining was normal, where criticism was the only language of affection, where fear was a way of life. Imagine living your whole life thinking that negativity is normal. Wouldn't that shape the way you engage with the world? So, when you encounter someone negative, instead of jumping into defense mode, ask yourself, what is the root of this behavior? What is driving this attitude? When you ask the right questions, you get closer to the real answers. Of course, understanding the root doesn't mean you allow people to trample over your boundaries. But it does allow you to approach each situation with maturity, not emotion. It gives you the ability to rise above instead of being dragged into someone else's emotional chaos. When you understand that negativity is often rooted in pain, you become less reactive and more compassionate. You stop wasting energy on trying to change people and start investing energy in protecting your peace. That shift can change the quality of your relationships, your emotional well-being, and your overall growth. Remember this, it's not about fixing negative people. It's about understanding them well enough that they no longer have the power to affect you. You cannot control the behavior of other people no matter how hard you try, but what you can control is how much influence they have over your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. This is where protecting your energy becomes essential. Your energy is the currency of your life. It fuels your focus, your creativity, your joy, your peace, and your purpose. And every time you allow a negative person to drain you, you're essentially giving away that currency without getting anything of value in return. Think of your energy as a limited resource. Just like you wouldn't give all your money to someone who wastes it, you shouldn't give all your time and mental space to people who constantly bring negativity into your life. You have to be selective, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. Some people do not deserve front row seats in your life. Not everyone has earned the right to your attention, your thoughts, or your emotional investment. It's easy to fall into the trap of trying to fix negative people. You think, maybe if I just help them more, maybe if I keep being positive around them, they'll eventually change. And while there's nothing wrong with being kind and supportive, there's a difference between helping someone and allowing yourself to be emotionally hijacked. Protecting your energy means knowing where that line is drawn. Some people have a dark cloud that follows them wherever they go, not because the world is always against them, but because they refuse to change their perspective. They've grown comfortable in their negativity and they expect others to adjust to their mindset. You cannot afford to let that cloud cover your light. You have a mission, you have goals, you have emotional and spiritual health to preserve. If someone's presence constantly brings stress, confusion, or self-doubt into your life, you must evaluate their place in your space. Protecting your energy also means managing your exposure. You don't have to cut everyone off, but you can reduce the time and attention you give to people who consistently drain you. If a conversation always leaves you exhausted, limit the length of that conversation. If someone always turns joyful moments into complaints, excuse yourself without guilt. You owe no one unlimited access to your peace. It's necessary for growth. Because the more energy you spend fighting unnecessary battles, the less you have for the battles that actually matter. When you're constantly reacting to negativity, your focus shifts from your vision to someone else's dysfunction. You start living in defense mode instead of creation mode. And that slows your progress, weakens your resolve, and steals your joy. There's also a spiritual aspect to this. Energy is not just mental, it's deeply spiritual. If you constantly allow yourself to be surrounded by pessimism, doubt, criticism, and fear, it begins to contaminate your spirit. It affects how you think, how you feel, and how you show up in the world. That's why it's so important to create emotional boundaries. Not walls that isolate you, but boundaries that preserve you. Surround yourself with people who feed your spirit. People who speak life, not those who drain it. People who challenge you to grow, not those who guilt you for evolving. Your energy is sacred. Guard it. Protect it. Prioritize it. Protecting your energy isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being wise. It's about knowing that you can't pour from an empty cup, and it's your responsibility to keep that cup full. Let peace be your compass. Let wisdom be your guide. And let your energy serve the highest version of yourself. One of the most liberating truths you can embrace in life is this: don't take it personally. Not everyone's opinion of you matters. Not every word thrown in your direction deserves a response, and not every act of negativity is about you, even when it feels personal. Negative people often operate from their own internal struggles, and what they project outward has far more to do with what's going on inside of them than with anything you've done. When someone criticizes you, insults you, or behaves in a toxic way, it's easy to feel hurt, confused, or even angry. But what if you took a step back and realized that their behavior is often a mirror reflecting their inner world, not a judgment of your character? People who are constantly negative are usually reacting to wounds, disappointments, or insecurities that have absolutely nothing to do with you. They are speaking from a place of pain, not perspective. And when you learn to see that, it changes everything. Imagine someone who constantly puts others down. That person may have grown up in an environment where love was conditional, where affirmation was scarce, and where criticism was a form of control. So now in adulthood, they repeat that pattern, not because you've done something wrong, but because that's all they know. When you internalize their words, you begin to live according to their reality, not your own. You let their limitations become your limitations. You let their fear become your fear. And that is a weight you were never meant to carry. The problem is most people haven't been taught this level of emotional intelligence. We're conditioned to believe that when someone is upset with us, we must be at fault. When someone withdraws, we must have done something wrong. When someone disrespects us, we must not be worthy of respect. But the truth is, many people's reactions are not rooted in your actions, they're rooted in their patterns. This is why it's so important to build a strong sense of self. When you know who you are, you don't need validation from someone who doesn't even understand themselves. You don't seek approval from someone who can't even approve of their own life. You become grounded, stable, and unshakable, not because negativity doesn't touch you, but because you no longer allow it to define you. Taking things personally is a trap that will keep you emotionally exhausted. It will make you defensive, insecure, and constantly second-guessing your every move. It will cause you to shrink yourself to avoid judgment or to bend yourself out of shape trying to please everyone. But no matter how much you try, some people will still misunderstand you, some will still criticize you, and some will never appreciate what you bring to the table. That has nothing to do with your value and everything to do with their vision. So the next time someone tries to rain on your joy, speak doubt into your dream, or tear you down when you're building yourself up, pause, breathe. Remind yourself, this is not about me. Their storm is not your storm. Their darkness does not have to dim your light. And their words do not get to rewrite your worth. When you stop taking things personally, you take back your power. You move from reaction to response, from insecurity to confidence, from confusion to clarity. You stop letting people rent space in your mind and you start living with freedom, focus, and peace. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You are not responsible for how others choose to behave. You are responsible for how you choose to respond. And choosing not to take it personally might be one of the greatest gifts you ever give yourself. Setting boundaries is not about being rude, distant, or cold. It's about being wise enough to protect your peace and strong enough to value yourself. When you allow people unlimited access to your time, emotions, and energy without any boundaries, you are essentially saying, my well-being is not a priority. And that's a message that not only others hear, but one that your own mind and heart begin to believe. Negative people often don't recognize boundaries because they are so consumed with their own issues that they fail to notice how their behavior affects others. That's why it is up to you to define the limits. You have to decide how much you're willing to tolerate, how often you'll engage, and what kind of treatment you'll accept. Setting boundaries is not about changing other people. It's about managing how much of their chaos you're willing to let into your space. One of the first boundaries you must set is emotional. Not every comment requires a response. Not every insult needs your attention. If someone is constantly dumping negativity on you, learn to mentally and emotionally detach. You can listen without absorbing. You can care without carrying. You can support without sacrificing your sanity. This emotional boundary creates a filter between their world and yours. Next comes the boundary of time. You are not obligated to spend hours with people who drain you. You can be polite, respectful, and still choose to limit your interactions. Just because someone is a coworker, a family member, or even a longtime friend doesn't mean they get to monopolize your time. Time is your most precious resource. Once it's gone, you can't get it back. So guard it like gold. Use it wisely and give it to those who uplift, inspire, and strengthen you. Verbal boundaries are just as crucial. Sometimes you need to speak up and let someone know calmly and clearly that their behavior is not acceptable. You don't need to be aggressive, but you do need to be assertive. Say things like, I'm not comfortable with that tone, or I'd prefer if we focus on solutions rather than complaints. These small but firm statements communicate your standards. And when you express your boundaries consistently, people start to understand where the line is drawn. But perhaps the most important boundary is the one you set within yourself. You must give yourself permission to walk away from situations and people that compromise your peace. Guilt is not a reason to stay. History is not a reason to stay. Even love without respect is not a reason to stay. You can love someone deeply and still recognize that being around them constantly is not good for your mental or emotional health. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out. They are fences meant to protect what's within. They're not about punishment, they're about preservation. And when you set them with wisdom and kindness, you're not only honoring yourself, you're teaching others how to treat you. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. If you constantly accept negativity, it will continue. If you quietly endure disrespect, it will become the norm. But if you stand up for your peace, even in small ways, you begin to shift the energy in your environment. Setting boundaries is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect. It shows the world that your mind, your time, and your spirit are valuable. And once you commit to protecting those things, you'll find that the quality of your relationships and your life begins to transform. You become like the people you surround yourself with. Whether you realize it or not, the company you keep has a deep influence on your mindset, your energy, and even the way you see yourself. That's why it's crucial to choose your circle wisely. Not everyone who comes into your life is meant to stay, and not everyone who stays is meant to grow with you. The people around you are either feeding your spirit or draining it. They're either pushing you forward or pulling you back. Negative people tend to view life through a lens of fear, limitation, and doubt. And if you're not careful, their mindset can begin to rub off on you. You might start second-guessing your dreams, questioning your abilities, or losing the enthusiasm you once had. That's not because you changed, it's because your environment did. When you constantly hear complaining, blaming, and negativity, your mind starts to normalize it. What you surround yourself with, you eventually absorb. This is why it's so important to evaluate your circle. Who are you giving your time, energy, and attention to? Are these people helping you grow, or are they keeping you stuck? Do they inspire you to be your best self, or do they make you feel like you're never enough? These are the hard questions that many avoid asking out of fear of losing people. But the truth is, outgrowing someone doesn't mean you hate them. It simply means you're choosing growth over comfort, vision over limitation, peace over drama. Start being intentional about who you allow into your inner space. Look for people who believe in possibility, people who challenge you to rise higher, not guilt you into playing small, people who speak life, not constantly focus on what's going wrong. When you're around the right people, their presence becomes a source of strength. They don't compete with you, they celebrate you. They don't just hear your goals, they hold you accountable to them. And most importantly, they remind you of your value when you start to forget it. Sometimes we hold on to toxic connections out of loyalty or history. But history is not a reason to stay in unhealthy relationships. Just because someone has been in your life for years doesn't mean they're meant to go where you're going. Growth often requires separation. It doesn't mean you stop loving someone, it just means you stop allowing their dysfunction to dominate your atmosphere. There's also something to be said about the power of solitude. Sometimes, to attract better, you need to learn to be alone, to understand your own worth without needing constant affirmation, to develop your mindset so that when new people come into your life, you're clear on what you'll accept and what you won't. The clearer you are about your own standards, the easier it becomes to recognize who fits and who doesn't. Remember, energy is contagious. If you surround yourself with people who are always complaining, always judging, always negative, that energy begins to settle into your spirit. But if you surround yourself with people who are hopeful, passionate, resilient, and purpose-driven, that energy lifts you up. Your circle should be a reflection of your future, not your fears. So make it a habit to audit your relationships. Do it with honesty. Do it with love. But most importantly, do it with the understanding that your peace, your joy, and your destiny are too important to be compromised by someone else's negativity. You don't need a crowd, you need alignment. You don't need approval, you need support. And you don't need to explain why you're protecting your space. Your growth is reason enough.